Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to start by noting my surprise to hear from my Democrat colleagues that the Mueller report is now of no consequence. After what they put this country through for years on end, endless investigations, millions of dollars spent, an impeachment inquiry against the President of the United States, and now we hear from person after person on that side of the dais that the Mueller report is of no consequence. No consequence? I kind of happen to think that the successful weaponization of the FBI by a presidential campaign, by the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign, for the first time in American history, getting the FBI to submit to a federal court false information, to get a wiretap during a presidential campaign. I kind of think that that is a relevant piece of information that maybe ought to be within the jurisdiction and the cognition of this committee. Of course, now my Democrat friends say there's nothing to see here, because now we have one of the largest scandals ever to engulf the FBI and the DOJ. Let me just remind you, Mr. Rosenstein, about what the FISA court said when it found out that it had been systematically lied to by the FBI and the Department of Justice. This is what the court said, sua sponte, on its own, and I quote, "The FBI's handling of the Carter Page applications, as portrayed in the Inspector General's report, was antithetical to the heightened duty of candor that is owed to the court. The frequency with which these representations made by FBI personnel turned out to be unsupported or contradicted by information in their possession and with which they withheld information detrimental to their case calls into question whether information contained in other FBI applications is reliable," end quote. In other words, the FISA court now wonders if it can trust anything that the FBI says. Anything. Now, you signed off on a FISA application to a federal court in an ex parte proceeding, which means the other side didn't have any chance to argue it. You signed off on it. It had 17 material misstatements, falsehoods, omissions. You signed off on it. You also said at the time you thought it was an above average application.
Correct.
How could you sign off on something with this number of misrepresentations that the FISA court later came back and said, this destroys our trust in the FBI? You signed off on it personally. How could this happen?
I approved the submission of it, and 4 federal judges signed off on it too, Senator, because, like me, they believed that the information had been verified and was accurate.
Did they have a duty to verify the information?
No, the agents had a duty to verify.
Oh, so you did not have a duty to verify the information?
I had a
It's
duty.
your name on the application.
Well, I had a duty to make sure it had been verified.
Did you rubber stamp it?
Senator, the Deputy Attorney General or the Attorney General.
Just answer my question. Did you rubber stamp? You said a second ago to Senator Cruz, you said I didn't rubber stamp it.
If you'd like me to explain, I will, but I certainly.
But you also testified today that you didn't read it. So I'm curious.
No, I didn't say.
How is it? Would you like us to have your testimony read back to you? You said I can't say that I read it. I don't think I read every page. I mean.
Yes, I did say that, yes. But
okay, so you didn't rubber stamp it, but you didn't read it.
You know, Senator, I have to explain the process.
Oh, I think we're familiar with the process.
No,
the OIG gave us the process. By the time it got to you, you had 17 critical errors, falsehoods, omissions, leading a federal court to say they have never seen anything like this and they can't trust anything else the FBI says, and you signed off on it. Let me ask you this. Who are we to hold responsible? Yes. You're saying it's not you.
No, I'm saying, Senator, that I am accountable for it. But the question is, why did it happen? Now, I'm no longer in the department, but there are people who are there who I expect will figure out why it happened and will fix the problem. So I'm not trying to deny.
Do you have any theories about what the problem might be?
I only know what the Inspector General's report reflects, Senator. And again, I've been gone for 13 months, so I have no insight.
Wouldn't you agree with me that a process that is so corrupted that it resulted in the abuse of a federal court in an ex parte proceeding during a presidential campaign is a threat to American democracy? Is a threat to the integrity of our elections? Would you agree with that?
It's certainly a threat to the integrity of the judicial system and the FISA process, but I need to explain to you, Senator, that you know, when you're running an organization with 115,000 people, you're not going to be able to personally verify the information.
No, I know. So and that's why you can't be held responsible.
No, I am
The FBI says
responsible.
they can't
I
be held
am
responsible. And so at the end of the day, it's nobody's fault. The
no.
FISA court has been misled. The FISA court is saying we can't trust anything the FBI says, but nobody's to blame for it. So let me just ask you, who should we hold responsible? What do you want this committee to do? The other side wants us to do nothing. They don't want to talk about it. They're happy for these abuses to go on, apparently. What do you suggest that we do?
I think, Senator, there are issues of accountability and blame. I'm accountable. I'm here being chastised by you, and that's part of my accountability. But the question is blame. What went wrong? And we need to figure out what went wrong. And I think when you say I signed off on it, it suggests that my responsibility was to actually do the investigation and verify the information. That's just not the responsibility of the deputy. The responsibility is to make sure we've got an accurate process in place that guarantees the integrity of the applications. And
But
it turned
that
out-
process wasn't in place.
It turned out that it wasn't. Exactly. And so if I'm at fault because I had a reason to know that or should have known that, I should be blamed for that. But I just don't know. I didn't see that in the IG report. I didn't see him blaming me or my predecessors. And that's all I know about it, Senator. So I certainly am accountable for it. But in order to solve this problem, yelling at me is not going to solve the problem. We need to figure out what happened. Did people engage in misconduct? Are there systemic problems? And fix them so it won't happen again.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you, Mr. Rosenstein, for your service, and we'll certainly, I'm sure this committee will take every pain not to hold you accountable or responsible. Apparently, we can't
I am
hold anybody
accountable.
accountable or responsible, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know what this committee is left to do, but I do know this. What has happened is unacceptable. And we've
I
heard the
agree.
FBI director sit in the seat that you're in, Mr. Rosenstein, and say he's not accountable. He says he's not making any changes. In fact, he's done nothing, the current FBI director, to address this situation. Nobody seems to want to do anything. Meanwhile, we're in another presidential election year. I look forward to hearing about how the FBI has weaponized the FISA court again in this election year. Who knows? We'll be hearing about that in 2 or 3 years from now. This circumstance is simply not acceptable, Mr. Chairman, and that's why I'm glad we're doing this, but we've got to hold somebody accountable for it.
Senator, as I said, I agree with you that, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could just finish the answer, that, again, there are questions of accountability and questions of blame, and it is the responsibility of Director Ray to solve these problems. And I don't know, I'm not familiar with the hearing
Well,
that you may reference
let
to,
me
but I
just-
certainly hope that
Yeah.
he'll solve these
So here's what's happening. We have recommendations from Horowitz how to make sure this doesn't happen again. We got Mr. Durham looking at criminality, and it's up to this committee to come up with a process, hopefully bipartisan, where we can make sure this doesn't happen again. And we're on it. I think it's important, and I think it's important Senator Coons be called on right now.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow up, though, because I'm accountable. I feel accountable for anything that went wrong in the department on my watch, but I think the issue is how do we fix the problem?
I understand what you're saying, Senator Coons.